welcome back to the Learneezee podcast. I'm here with Patrick, who founded the podcast with the aim to speak with professional expats about their experiences moving to and living in Germany. Today, we're exploring risk, connection, and finding home far away from home. Our guest today is Ashley Matthäus, a filmmaker, a community builder, and American expat in Freiburg, Germany. Ashley wears a lot of hats, from leading Creative Mornings Freiburg to organizing events at the Carl Schurz House to raising a family, all while building a space for others to belong. Welcome, Ashley.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to start with something simple. Ashley, what languages do you speak?
So my native language is English, but I also speak German, and I speak very, very rudimentary French, and I know the American Sign Language finger alphabet.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And which language is the most recent one that you're learning?
German.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You knew French before?
Yeah, my dad was in the military, and so we actually lived in Belgium for a while, and I went to a French school when we're talking pre-first grade, but the environment was French, and so I learned a lot of French as a kid. And then when we moved back to the States, I took French in high school and have retained some of it, but I've noticed that German is a very dominant language, and so it definitely kicked out all of the French that I know, and so it's more of a passive knowledge at this point. But I am always excited when I hear people in the area speaking French and like, oh, I think I understand what they're saying. And of course, when it comes to speaking, then I speak this garbled mix of German, English, and maybe like a little bit of one or two French words there in there. And then with sign language, I learned a little bit of it when I was in elementary school. And then after college, I had a good friend who's hard of hearing, and he also kind of opened my eyes to sign language and music, and that's what I ended up doing my master's thesis on, was music in the deaf community.
And when you were studying in the UK, this is when you did that master's degree, or what exactly was it that you were doing there?
I went to England for my master's degree, and my master's was in visual anthropology, which is, in effect, I guess you could say it's quite similar to documentary filmmaking, but with a focus on an anthropological focus or an ethnographic focus. And for my senior thesis, I did a research project on music in the deaf communities, where I kind of did a deep dive into YouTube music videos with people signing, and also interviewed a couple of people such as deaf comedian C.J. Jones in the U.S.
And it seems like since then you've always been into this interviewing, doing documentaries and making films since college years, right? And more than 20 years maybe have passed, and your way of doing documentaries have developed. Recently, you helped to post-produce a documentary on Jesse Owens. Do you want to tell us about Jesse? Exactly. Can you tell us about him? Jesse Coston, exactly.
Jesse Coston.
Oh, yeah.
Jesse Owens was a track star, and also when I was quite young in elementary school, I did a book project on Jesse Owens, and so I do know a lot about Jesse Owens.
Even before, exactly.
But the documentary is on Jesse Coston, and then with Jesse Coston, this is kind of the first feature documentary that I've ever worked on. I was not aware of him until Raphael Buchner came to me, because I run the filmmaking club at the Carl-Schurz House.
Yeah. And
Raphael contacted me via email saying, oh, I see that you have this filmmaking club at the Carl Schurz House. I have a lot of footage from an American who's been living in Germany in the Freiburg area for quite some time now. And we're looking for a little bit of help to edit it and put it together. And then the two of us met up, and he first gave me a little bit of background to Jesse Coston and who he is, how he came to Germany. It was really amazing, just like what Jesse had to go through, his transition from the States to here with his Fulbright scholarship, and then trying to find work as an opera singer here in Germany as a Black man in the 80s, basically. And so I told Raphael, I said, yeah, I think this is a great project. I would love to take it on. And he was like, okay, I have 5 hours of interview footage that we can go through. Here you go. And if it ends up being 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 2 hours, still, that's fine. I think his original idea was actually that he just wanted to present it to Jesse on his 80th birthday, just as kind of like snippets of his life, and Jesse's they call him a sunny boy. He's super, like, you can see the sun shining through him even at 80 plus years old now. And he still has that light in his eyes, and you can, it was such a great project to work on. And I was so happy that all of these pieces kind of came together.
It was just for his 80th birthday, and you went above and beyond, and then this became a feature film that was published, and that's really impressive, So that means that the quality was there, right?
Yeah, for sure. There was so much within. I mean, I felt like it was it was an amazing experience because I took all of the footage that Raphael had from the interviews, and I would listen to them, and so I felt like I got to know him very intimately without ever meeting him. Yeah, and just knowing all of these little pieces of his story, and then I started to find that kind of thread that you could connect them all with, because with interview questions, and I'm you guys know this as well, when you interview somebody, it doesn't always go as planned, right? And so you have this setup in this order, but it doesn't necessarily neatly fall into that, or maybe you find a story within that interview that's even more interesting, and you want to dive into it and go that way with it. And so there were lots of twists and turns, and so I had to kind of find these bits and pieces, and as the editor, for me, it's really, really important to stay true to the person's not only words, but meaning, what they're trying to get across. And what was really important to me as well, because I hadn't met Jesse yet, I wanted him to see it before we even decided what we were going to do with it. And we sat together and we watched it with Jesse and his partner, Peter, his husband, Peter. And it was really hard not to just be like a fangirl. They're like, I know so much about you. I know all of this because he doesn't know anything about me. Yes, like, he has no idea who I am. I'm just this random young
I wouldn't say so. I mean, there's so many parallels to the stories, no?
Yeah. I wanted to get into some of the parallels, but I did see the movie. I went to the opening. It was really well done. And so I would recommend, we'll talk later in the interview about how you can see this film, but we'll get to that. We have to get back to you a little bit. So in the same way that Jesse Coston crossed an ocean to sing in Freiburg, that a city you also ended up in, though not for your career, though, right? Yeah, you arrived with no job security and no clear, I hate to say this, but no 100% clear plan here.
No vision, no plan, no future, Ashley. You arrived with nothing, Ashley.
Exactly, from the bottom to the top, of course. But let's start.
I don't know if I would say top, but...
Yeah, we're not there. Okay, so can you take us back to the leap and what was going through your mind before you made the leap to come to Freiburg?
Sure. Yeah. So back in, 2008 is when I was studying in England, and that is when I met my now husband, Alec. And so that's how I met and fell in love with a German. And after our degree concluded a year later, he went back to Freiburg to finish his degree, and I went back to the U.S. to look for work. There was a major economic crash in 2008, and it was very, very hard to find work, especially as a visual anthropologist. So I applied for so many different jobs, but I was in that situation where I was highly qualified but underexperienced. I couldn't even get like a part-time holiday job working for Macy's. I interviewed for a babysitting job, and they wanted me to give them a reference from my master's thesis advisor. No, I'm not doing that. No. And then I also, my other prospect was working as working part-time at a car dealership. And I was about to be called in for a third interview there, and that's when I decided, no, I'm moving to Germany. I miss Alex. I want to see where the relationship goes. The idea at the time was that I would come for 3 months because that's what's allowed. You can stay for 3 months as a tourist. And then I thought, well, okay, I have my return ticket for that 3-month time, but we'll see what happens. If I'm able to find work as a freelancer, then I go through the visa process and apply and start doing all of this. And I had a lot of friends who studied English. And so one of them even worked for one of the language schools in Freiburg and said, oh, yeah, if you want to go and become a teacher, you just have to be here, come in, apply. You're a native speaker. You have your TEFL, you have your, bachelor's and master's degree. And I decided to then follow that path.
So you've gotten halfway through the map, right? You explained to us how you got to the place where you could work in Germany. But was there a moment for you where it felt like everything might fall apart?
I mean, there were tons of moments. Oh my God.
So you got to pick one. Pick one or two.
Look, from the get-go, I was like, this specific going to work. I would say at least once a year, there was some sort of major crisis involving my visa or what was going on. So there's plenty of red tape in Germany. There's tons of forms and lots of paperwork that you have to fill out. As long as you come prepared, you're good. It might not seem like it at the time because you put in your application, you're like, okay, I have like few more weeks and then they're going to kick me out of the country.
Was there a time where you just said, you know what, this is not worth it? That's kind of what I'm more curious about. I, at one point in time, almost felt like I'm ready to go home. And then I got a job that allowed me to get another visa that allowed me to stay, and I took it, Yeah. How do you feel? Was there a moment? Because you started this relationship and you started a job, you started this freelancing thing. It becomes so stressful. Like you said, every year you have to be back in this Ausländerbehörde. You have to wait 10 hours just for them to tell you to go back home. You don't have enough documents, Not necessarily that Germany will kick you out, that you were like, I'm done with Germany.
Yeah, I see. From the start, it was very tentative because I had no idea what to expect going into the German bureaucracy. I'd never gone through an immigration process myself before. And in the 5 years that I was a freelancer, I probably saw at least 15, maybe even 20 different advisors. There was a point where, so as a freelancer, and also as somebody with bills to pay, student loans to pay back, where they're going to go after your family if you don't pay them.
That's the American way.
I thought, okay, I'm freelancing. I need to make as many hours as possible in order to be able to live in Germany, but also to be able to pay back my debt in the US. And so I would take any teaching gig that came my way. It didn't matter what time of day, it didn't matter where it was. I was going, and I was constantly on the train back and forth between from Freiburg all the way up to Waldkirch Kolnau. And back down, and also at some point also going into Sexau, another point going out into some sort of Industriegebiet somewhere, I don't even remember. So I, at one point, was financially doing really well, but I was burnt out. And then I said, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. It's not sustainable. Cut off. But then came the taxes, which I was not expecting. And so burnout came, and then maybe half a year later, it was tax time. And all of a sudden it was like, you need to pay us 3,000 euros. I'm like, I don't have 3,000 here. And that was a really, really hard time. And where I had to have the difficult discussion with my partner to say, I don't know what I'm going to do. How do we handle this? He was still a student. He didn't have 3,000 euros. And I did. It's like, well, okay, what's going to happen then here? I don't know if this is always the case, but we went to the Finanzamt and said, look, this is the situation. I was making that much money, and then I have since left that job, so I'm no longer making that money anymore. So I don't have that to give at this time. And then they set up a payment plan that was manageable for the money that I was making.
That's how they usually do it.
So it was still lots of paperwork to go through, plenty of German bureaucracy to go through. It's a huge headache. But I am very thankful because that then, in effect, afforded me to stay longer, afforded me to sort out my priorities a little bit more, and to also start thinking, okay, do I want to continue this freelance life? Do I want to now to try to pursue something else? Is my German good enough now? So it kind of gave me that turning point of, okay, what's going to happen now? I need to make sure that I prepare for this in the future. Yeah.
Very nice.
I just want to add though, if you wanted to work really hard and be very not happy, you might as well have gone back to the US, I think.
Good point.
It's a good point. Good point.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. What's the point of being in Europe if you're only working? Yeah.
You reach this pivot point, you have time, and even though you're able to go back on the amount of work you're doing, you still have a freelancing teaching visa. That's not really a flexible visa. That's not something you can decide, hey, I want to do film and make money with film with. Yet somehow, throughout your time in Germany, you found ways to branch out. Even from some of the early teaching gigs that you did, you had an American weekend. And in the current job that you're in, you have this film club. And you do this German-American business community. And somehow you found, even within that limited visa, ways to continue to expand your role.
Yeah, I think it probably boils down to, I don't know if it's just a U.S. American thing, because I've talked with Patrick about this a lot, actually, because I feel like we're both very similar in this, that we have that drive, that ambition, that you're always going and searching for the next project. You're always looking for more. You have your eyes out for those opportunities, and you grab them when they come to you to just see what happens with them. A lot of times you end up with more than you can hold on to, or sometimes you end up with nothing at all, right? And
good point.
I think, it's definitely a risk, and it was risky at the time. But in that moment, I didn't think so. In that moment, I was like, okay, I'm here. I want to stay here, but I also want to be happy as well. I don't want to drive myself into the ground and have zero quality of life. And so what I did do was I focused on the places where I actually enjoyed going and teaching and being. And there was this teeny tiny school in Kolnau. I'm actually not sure if it's still in operation or not. But that was kind of my happy place. I loved the students that were there. Anytime that I would go there, even just getting off the train, it's like the air just felt fresher, cleaner. I was just relaxed, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. If I ended up needing to stay late and I missed my train, I was like, oh, well, I'll just make another tea or so, and I'll just chat with my boss who was there, Nadine. And I think because I then focused on that, and she saw how involved I was and how much I cared about the work that I did, eventually it came to be where I don't even know if I approached her or if she approached me about having a mini job. And I remember thinking, oh, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that with my visa. And so did the visa check thing. And then, it was possible. I could be a freelance English teacher and then have this little mini job as well, where you were getting paid reliably then, as opposed to with a freelance, you only get paid for those hours that you're going in and teaching. And so then I became her business assistant, and I took on doing such programming like an American weekend or things like that. So through getting this experience at the little school in Kolnau, through knowing how I need to feel fulfilled in the workplace, but I also need to work, knowing that, okay, this freelance style is not sustainable for me. I need to find something that is more steady. Everything seems to be coming together right now. I'm going to make the decision to pull back from teaching and focus on finding a job. And so I actually, when I told my employer at the little school, she was quite sad because she'd be losing me. But then she also said, well, I'm also thinking about selling the school. I even talked with her about the potential of me taking the school on. But at that point in time, it would have been, way too much for me. And then I spoke with Ute Schroeder at the Carl Schurz House and said, I know that your assistant is leaving. Do you think, or could you see me being an assistant in some capacity, because I'm looking to transition from teaching out into the German workforce? And so I applied and came to be where I am now, I guess. And then
That's really cool.
Right. So then through my role of working at the Carl Schurz House in the English language area, where I was coordinating, or I still am coordinating, the English courses for adults and companies, then came the re-emergence of the German-American business community, which had existed, I don't know, maybe 10 years prior to when I was there, but then kind of had fizzled out, faded away. And so when I came back in, talked with the board about it, and they said, okay, well, we want to get this up and going again, and we think that it makes sense for you to do it. because of your connection already with the companies, the English language courses. And yeah, so that's kind of how all of that came to be.
I love it because it's all about connections. It's all about you actually getting to know a person, to get to know their story, to get to find a thread that connects them to something that also connects you to them. And I hope after this podcast, maybe you're in a more financially stable situation, you could actually look to buying that school out.
Oh, it's already. There's another.
I don't even know if it's still. I don't even know if it's still there. Actually,
but that'll be for those who follow the podcast, so you can come back.
Come back for more.
Yeah, exactly. But sticking to the theme of connections here. So in so many of your roles, right, teaching, organizing, filmmaking, there's a common thread of building space for connection. How did you make that, your, mission, or was that just always part of who you are, this connection, being able to connect?
I would say more for people that feel outside of the culture, because when you're doing this American weekends or the German American business community, it feels like it's always people outside of German culture. And you do this really good role of bringing people into a community that they can feel like they belong to.
I mean, I guess it's something that I just embody, or it's ingrained in me, because it's not really something that I think about actively. I've come to realize now that I'm 40, now that I have kids, that community, especially when living abroad, is so important. It's like, if you want to stay here, that's great, but you have to build a community for yourself, because if you don't have that, if you don't feel that connection, when those tough times come, you're just going to want to pack up and go home. And maybe you will. And that will be the end of your journey, which is fine. Maybe your life is supposed to go in a different direction, and that's going to be your story. But if it is something where you want to stay here, you need to put into the effort of not just finding a job, making the money, finding an apartment to stay. You need that support system. You need your community around you. And that's why I've created such communities that are both work-related, social-related, but also personally as well.
I want to talk actually about this social communities that you were talking about. I want to zoom in specifically on your work with Creative Mornings, where I actually met you before you were the co-host of the Freiburg chapter. I heard about Creative Mornings on a podcast from Guy Raz on how I built this, and I thought it was amazing. He spoke to the founder, Tina Roth Eisenberg. I don't know if you know much about her story. She's a Swiss designer who moved to New York, and she founded a few other things, but one of the things that she started that really gained movement all around the world, including here in Freiburg, was this Creative Mornings, a place where people can connect over breakfast and a talk. And she would call herself a human gatherer at heart. And with this Creative Mornings, she also kind of termed it this church for the creative, I'm just wondering how that story resonates with you, because I feel a lot of similarities.
I think, her story definitely resonates with me, and the idea and motivation behind Creative Morning really speaks to me as well, where everyone is creative, everyone is welcome, right? That's what it is in a nutshell. And I actually first heard about Creative Morning when Lou, the host at the time, back in, I want to say it was maybe 2021, contacted me about being a speaker. And then I went to a talk with Matthaeus, and she was talking about, I think the theme was now. And for her talk, she passed out these little paper bags and had everyone put their phone in them and close it, put them under the bed, just so that we could all be there in the now. Mm-hmm. And she spoke to us, and she read a little bit from her writing, and I was so inspired by her. And from that, I asked about getting involved with the organizational side of Creative Mornings, because I thought, this is what I'm missing. This is what I really need, just because I'm not a morning person, but I have to get up in the morning for my kids. Yeah, and if there's something else happening in the morning that's not work related, that brings me joy, I'm there for it. And so I was so happy to see, and it also helped connect me with a different part of Freiburg and a different community then that I hadn't yet tapped into. And I love doing that because, I mean, Freiburg's not that big of a place, but it's big enough that there are little separate circles that kind of run around. And then you might have one connection that bleeds into another, and then those circles end up connecting. And I love seeing that happen. And I love that collaboration.
Best feeling ever.
And then last year, the host, Lou, said that she was moving with her family and asked if I wanted to take it over alongside with Max, my co-host. And so we have since taken it on. And there's a lot of stress in planning and preparing and putting events together. But then when you're there and the community that comes, the people that come to these events, it's just everything's been just easy and open and friendly, and everyone's there to listen and to talk and to connect, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Right,
as simple as connection is the goal, I think.
It's a great answer. No, that's a real labor of love, and you mentioned that there's a lifestyle there where you're constantly connecting, trying to get people to connect to each other, and it's got to be exhausting, right? But what draws you to this kind of social investment, even when it's exhausting, though?
I think this is something that I've always done that always ends up getting me. And it's something that even since I was young and even in high school, I can still remember, my mom's voice in my head saying, Ashley, you need to prioritize. You need to prioritize. You're doing too much. You can't do everything. You can't be everywhere. And I would always just say, why not? This is what I want to do.
Exactly. I want to connect people.
But in truth, I have found that in spreading myself too thin, that you lose the depth of the connection. Yeah, so then you might have that surface connection and you're still kind of going through the motions, and you know that there's joy in it. You know that there's something good there, but because you're spread out too thin and everywhere, you can't feel that deep joy, right? You can't feel all of the good feelings from it. You can't be as present as you want to be. True. And that's something that I definitely struggle with and that I am working on.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I am someone who, if you tell me that I can't do something, I'm going to prove to you that I can.
Yeah, same here. I feel your pain.
But it does come at an expense, Patrick. And so that's a really good question. I think it's something you should also take to heart, Mr. All Over the Place. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
That that you need to think about, okay, where are my priorities? What is it that brings me joy? What do I need to do? What do I love to do? How can I make that world cohesive? Yeah.
I'm as a full-time parent to add on to that, and thank you for that insight, because it's so I need to take words from you as well. I struggle with the same things that you struggle with, also with this spreading yourself too thin. But I don't have children. How do your kids then deal with you sharing your time in all of these different activities that you're involved in?
I think what helps, at least, so I have a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old. And now that my oldest is old enough to kind of understand and also even engage or sit quietly, I try to involve him in a lot of what I'm doing. And so he's come to a couple of the Creative Mornings events with me. And when I entrust him with responsibility, I say, okay, we need to set up the buffet table. How do you think we should do it? And then he says, okay, well, we're going to put the rolls here, the napkins here. And then he takes charge, and he really likes being involved like that. And so I do hope and think that it's instilling some sort of confidence in him. I've had to bring my baby along as well. Now that he's a toddler, he's not that into, he's not going to sit and be quiet and let me talk or do what I need to do. He's going to want to rove around and explore. And I think for him, at his stage of development, it's more so, as long as I always come back, that's really important. But yeah, it comes back to being present and to, setting priorities, I guess, as much as I don't want to use my mom's words, I do need to heed them to prioritize. But I think when
Mom
you have
was
kids,
right.
yeah, but your whole lifestyle changes when you have kids. You can't do everything that you used to do. And for me, I always want to be home for dinner times. I want to be home to put the kids in bed. Every once in a while, there's an evening event, of course, and I can't do that, but I try as much as possible to be there in the evening, have dinner together, put the kids to bed, read a story, just having that little moment with them, that connection with them.
Do you think growing up, they will find ways to appreciate the sacrifice? I think it is a sacrifice. Or will they see it as, oh, my mom doesn't spend time with me, she's always doing these events. Or maybe they'll even appreciate the fact that you allowed them to be part of your film clubs and Creative Mornings.
I mean, time will tell.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. As a mom, as a parent, that it's important for your kids to just see that there is a world outside of the family bubble.
Exactly.
Yeah, and to involve them in that. And I think that's really, really important. And it helps build that connection and bring it further so that they see you not only as a parent, but also as a person, as a member of the community even as well.
Yeah, I love that. So Ashley, last question, right? You've been in Germany now almost half your life. That's enough to compare both sides. I would say a third. I don't know how. You've been here for about a third of your life in Germany, and then now having a family in Germany is enough to like kind of look at both sides of your life and what you would then call home, and how you then, even for an expat, then are able to build a sense of home in a place that wasn't necessarily built for you because you chose this. You could have always taken the route back home, or the home that you are more accustomed to, perhaps.
I think it's a very big question. It's a very personal question and it's very individualized as well for everyone. But for me, I mean, I think it probably goes back to my upbringing as well, because as I mentioned, my dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot. My sister was born in California. I was born in Alaska. My brother was born in Belgium. We lived in Belgium for a couple of years. We lived all over the U.S. And went to different schools. And I always had this feeling, just almost like itching under my feet, like, okay, now it's time to go now. I haven't necessarily had that since I've been here, though. So I do feel like I found my place. What is the saying? Home is where I lay my hat.
Yeah.
Right. So really, the place doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't. I mean, the place factors into it, sure, and like there are plenty of things that I miss. And I can't say that I'm from Germany because I wasn't born here either, but I do feel comfortable here. This is my home. And I think it boils down to your community, to your own family, to that support system that you built up for yourself. So yeah, home is where I lay my hat.
Okay,
short and
cool.
sweet.
Right now it's Freiburg.
Wonderful. So I want to thank you, Ashley. And in closing, we'd like to give you a chance to promote a few projects, maybe any new projects or anything that you want to put out there for the audience, that they could probably participate in the future.
Well, I would definitely encourage anybody who is in the Freiburg area to come check out Creative Morning. We have an event one Friday morning a month. You can check us out on Instagram. If you are an expat or a U.S. American or somebody looking for a community in the Freiburg area, and you're an English speaker, or maybe you're looking to improve your English speaking skills, definitely check out the Carl-Schurz House, the German-American Institute here in Freiburg. And then I would also happily promote the documentary that I did on Jesse Coston of Life and Opera. That is something that is available to rent from the Carl-Schurz House Library. And right now it's only available for private viewing. However, if anybody would like to message me, I would be happy to share a link.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. I really enjoyed this episode, guys. I just want to close out to say, please check out Learneezee's Web 3.0 blog on Medium, or sign up for the Learneezee newsletter at learneezee.com. And I just want to close by saying to everyone, keep learning easy. And until next time.